Every time I read one of those tragic novels about a man who finally leaves, I can't help but focus on the male lead even more. The hero always decides to walk away only after enduring exactly 100 heartbreaks. I honestly can't stop myself from laughing at that. Why would a woman give a man so many chances? To keep hurting her over and over again? Is he really worth that much pain? A man who hasn't learned his lesson after the first few times is a lost cause. Any smart person should be able to see when a relationship is dead. You should pack up and leave without a second thought, no matter the reason. So, when I became the CEO's husband of convenience, I had one goal: be obedient and sensible. But now that this system is in control, what exactly is the situation? The CEO married me just to keep me from bothering her and her true platonic love. I'll admit, it was a little intimidating at first, but then she handed me a black card with no limit. I snatched that card and bolted straight to the nearest mall. I made sure to put plenty of distance between us. I stayed dozens of miles away just to get started. My new mission? Shop until I drop. I went wild, because there was no way I was just going to sit around her house. If I couldn't have her heart, I might as well spend every cent of her money. Meanwhile, at an exclusive, high-end restaurant, the atmosphere was incredibly elegant. Suddenly, the CEO's phone started ringing incessantly. She glanced up toward the ceiling, then shifted her gaze toward the vibrating device. She didn't answer. She just picked up her red wine and took a slow sip. Shinzo watched her with love and doubt in his eyes. He knew today was a special day. Today was our wedding anniversary. What do you think your husband is feeling right now? He asked. Why worry about what he thinks? She replied coldly. Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up and checked the bank notifications. 188 yuan. 18, 19, 1,999 yuan. The charges kept hitting her account one after another. Then a jump to 888. Then 500,000. In 2 years of marriage, this was the first time I had ever touched her card. Hugh Kingen, rubbed the glowing screen with the tips of my fingers. The corners of my mouth curled into a smirk, and my gaze was anything but subtle. Shinzo bit his lip and looked at her. He asked her why she wouldn't go back, but before she could speak, another notification hit. A massive charge from Nivea's account for 888,000. 6,888,888 yuan. The alerts from Nivea's account just kept coming. 1,988, 1,800, 288 yuan. It was the first time I felt the rush of spending like this. I finally knew the happiness of buying whatever I wanted without looking at a single price tag. I just leaned back and enjoyed it. I reveled in the VIP service, being treated like a literal god. The urge to spend had been suppressed inside me for more than 20 long years. Now, it was uncontrollable. Luxury watches, sports cars, designer suits. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Nivea's phone continued to chime every few seconds, but she didn't move a muscle to stop me. I looked around, but the atmosphere at the table was heavy and suffocating. Her phone had chimed 18 times by the time we finished the meal. Just as she was about to put it away, a call from Su Jinyao flashed on the screen. I have something to tell you about your husband, but I'm not sure if I should. Even through the screen, I could practically feel Su Jinyao's smug, taunting smile. I frowned and thought, just spit it out already. Su Jinyao couldn't help but let out a sharp laugh. It was a cold, mocking sound. I just saw him here, she said. Your husband is with 7 young models all at once. If you don't get here now, your head is going to turn into a green meadow. 7 models? All for him. I couldn't believe it. Was that even possible? I stood there, completely stunned. Then, Su Jinyao sent a photo to my phone. I stared at the man in the picture, barely recognizing him. He had short, elegant hair and a sharp jawline. He was wearing a high-end, black casual suit with polished leather shoes. Everything was expensive and custom-made, creating a perfect, striking silhouette. He looked like a vision of incomparable beauty. Su Jinyao's message flashed. Do you recognize your husband in this photo? I stared at the screen and realized something. I had been completely blind until now. I thought, is that really Nukin? It's impossible. You should just leave, I said. I can go to the movies alone. I put my phone away and watched Buckingham leave with Chinja. Chinja was already busy posting updates. He was flooding his social media feeds with news. He was celebrating the big release of his new book and the premiere of his very first movie. 20 minutes later, a notification pinged from the bank. 1 million had just been spent at the Royal Leisure Club. Inside the club's private box, the lights were pulsing. The music was loud and the party was in full swing. I was finally enjoying myself. I reclined comfortably on the plush sofa. I sipped on a glass of vintage red wine, a bottle that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I was surrounded by 7 stunning models. They all had stunning figures and were catering to my every whim. One of them was carefully tending to me. She was treating the wound, the one on my forehead that was almost fully healed. Another sat beside me. She was perched on the sofa, gently massaging my head. One was working on my lower back. Another kneaded my shoulders from behind, while one peeled fruit. The rest were putting on a show, singing and dancing just for me. This was the life. This level of service was basically heaven on earth. This was a scene I had imagined countless times, and I felt completely at peace, satisfied. So, when the club manager personally came to check on the room, I didn't hesitate for a second. I made a grand gesture and swiped Buckingham's card for another million. Suddenly, Buckingham himself pushed open the door to the private box. He froze as he caught me tracing the collarbone of one of the beautiful models. I traced her skin like I'd never seen a woman before, and it felt incredible. I wanted more. These models were on a completely different level. They were young, feminine, and absolutely stunning, flaunting their figures without a shred of hesitation. I felt my heart racing. I was about to have a nosebleed. The rich life is freaking amazing. But then, a loud bang echoed through the room. It was followed by a sharp, icy command. Everyone get out. I didn't expect this. I didn't think Buckingham would actually show up and ruin the mood like this. He looked at me like I was just a tool he could use. Buckingham's expression turned dark and grim. His face was like the sky, right before a massive storm hits. In an instant, the entire private box went dead silent. Silence fell, leaving just the two of us. I leaned back on the sofa and stared at her. It was no wonder the original owner of this body fell in love with this woman at first sight. Her face was unforgettable. She instantly made those other models look dull and plain. Sharp brows, cold eyes, a high bridge to her nose, and features as deep and defined as a divine masterpiece. She wore a long pink dress that hugged her curves, showing off a slender, elegant figure, a pale neck, and hair as white as fresh snow, paired with black stockings that reached her thighs. The fabric perfectly accentuated the shape of her legs. It brought out her tall, proud stature as she stood there with her hands on her hips, radiating an overwhelming charm. She was enough to make anyone salivate. I started to imagine her future, wondering what she'd be like as a top-tier model. Then, I heard her angry voice cut through my thoughts. You're using my money just to cheat on me in here? Do you really think I won't do anything to you, Mukin? Buckingham growled. I just looked at her and said, thanks. For the first time, I couldn't help but check myself out in the mirror. My usual stiff hairstyle had been transformed into a short, clean cut. It looked fresh and sharp, giving me the confidence to argue my point. What do you mean, your money? We're husband and wife. Isn't your money mine too? You have no problem throwing cash around so your little mistress can eat, drink, and have her fun. You spend a fortune making sure your precious lover eats, drinks, and has a blast. Why can't I spend a little to have someone keep me company? You take Shinsei out to romantic dinners and late-night movies. I don't blame you for cheating, and I'm not going to bother you about it. I'm just looking for someone to spend time with. I just wanted to relax, but you barge in here acting like a maniac. It's honestly a total lack of class. If Jin saw you like this, he'd think you actually liked me, and he'd be so disappointed. I wasn't afraid of her at all. In the original story, she had rejected the previous owner of this body so many times. She treated him like garbage, pushing him away with total disdain. It reached the point where she felt disgusted by even his slightest touch. To put it simply, she had a literal allergy to any physical contact with the original me. And touching me is like getting burned. So sleeping in the same bed actually makes me feel safe. Hugh Kingen let out a cold, furious laugh. He reached out and gripped my jaw, mocking me with a gaze that pierced right through me. Stop pretending, he hissed. You maxed out my card and caused this scene just to lure me here, didn't you? I looked him in the eye and reached out, resting my palm against him. I let my hand slide down to his waist. I could feel his heat through the thin fabric of his clothes. I traced his silhouette slowly, testing his patience. So, you left Chunja just to come see his father? Does that mean I'm more important to you than he is? The woman's ego was clearly massive. Hugh Kingen's face darkened instantly at my words. He tightened his grip on my wrist until the pressure became painful. I've already told you, don't push your luck. Don't cross the line with me, and don't get any delusions. This is the last time. If I ever see you using the Geo family name to pull these stunts and ruin our image again, then your position as the head of the Geo household is over. He shoved me away in disgust and grabbed a tissue to wipe his hands clean. Just like the book said, he looked at me with pure physical revulsion. I almost laughed to myself as I rubbed my chin where he'd gripped it. I sat back on the sofa, crossed my legs, and looked up at him with total disdain. I don't even care about seeing my son anymore, let alone sleeping with you. So, just hand over the agreement. The divorce papers. I knew if I hesitated for even a second, I might regret it. Hugh Kingen leaned down, a slow, mocking smile spreading across his lips. Divorce? Are you sure about that? You fought so hard to marry me, and a second ago you seemed starved for my touch. Now you're claiming you want a divorce? What a joke. I let my gaze linger on his face for a moment before dropping it lower. I decided to be blunt and lay all my cards on the table. I gave him a simple choice. Either you let me sleep in peace, or we sign those divorce papers right now. Hugh Kingen's expression darkened instantly as he pulled out his phone. He called his assistant right in front of me and barked an order. Draft a divorce agreement and have it delivered to the house tomorrow morning. The original owner of this body loved him, but I certainly didn't. The original owner was obsessed with him until death, refusing to let go even without his love. But I'm not interested in fighting for a man who leads to my family's ruin. Why should I hang myself from the first crooked tree I see when there are thousands of options? I grabbed my unfinished wine and drained the glass, not leaving a single drop behind. I stood up and told him, it's your choice, but don't come crying to me later. Hugh Kingen actually let out a dry, mocking laugh at that. I ignored him completely. I just threw on my coat and grabbed my watch and phone. Everything I had was brand new and expensive. I walked out the door without giving him a second glance. Kingen watched me from behind, clearly unimpressed by my rich young master act. He stood there with his arms crossed, his eyes tracking my every move. He was probably convinced that I was just drunk and acting out. In his mind, that was the only reason I'd ever dare to mention a divorce. Neither of us said a single word during the entire drive back home. I went straight to my room, while Kingen let out another cold chuckle behind me. He was clearly looking forward to something. He wanted to see the look on my face the moment reality hit. The moment his lawyers finally threw those divorce papers onto the table. Fine by me. Tomorrow, I'm finally getting my freedom. As he walked past my bedroom door, he heard my voice echoing from inside. He stopped dead in his tracks as I sang at the top of my lungs. Today is a good day. Everything I desire is finally coming true. Tomorrow will be even better. I'm ready to fly and stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun. I didn't care who heard me singing about the dreams I was chasing. In this new life, everything felt possible. Hugh Kingen stood there listening to me, probably thinking I sounded like a drunken ghost. He hesitated at the door, trying to prevent some kind of disaster, fearing I had completely lost control of myself. He reached out and turned the doorknob, only to find it wouldn't budge. I had actually locked him out. The man I used to spend every waking moment trying to seduce. The man I used to beg to take me back to my father's house. The man I used to crave. I had shut him out and kept right on screaming my song. I believe in myself. I believe in tomorrow. I believe that youth has no limits. I sang until the sun began to set over the horizon. Hugh Kingen gave up on trying to talk to me. Seeing the state I was in from the alcohol, he finally turned around and left. I was staying in the master bedroom because he always refused to share a room with me. He preferred sleeping in the guest room, so this place had become my private sanctuary. I looked around the large, luxurious room that used to belong to the original owner. I touched the expensive watches in the closet as the dizzying haze of the night faded away. I hummed a tune while picking out designer clothes and took a bath in the massive tub. I put on silk pajamas so soft I just wanted to meld into them. But even lying in that big, comfortable bed, I couldn't close my eyes. I couldn't sleep at all. It felt like a dream so beautiful it couldn't be real. The next morning, Hugh Kingen woke up expecting a disaster, but there was no chaos waiting for him. Breakfast was already prepared on the table, just like usual. He glanced at my bedroom door, and a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. He probably thought I was scared now that I was sober and was hiding like a turtle. He likely assumed I regretted my bold demand for a divorce last night. A cold, mocking smile played on his lips. He didn't say a word. He just tossed the signed divorce papers onto the coffee table. Then, he left for the office without a second thought. The bed was so comfortable that I slept until I woke up naturally at noon. Looking around that luxurious room, I confirmed it was real. I had actually been transported into this world. I went over the plot of the story in my head one more time, just to be sure. In the book, our marriage doesn't even last 3 years. Honestly, lasting that long would be a miracle, because in less than a year, Hugh Kingen is destined to win it all. He'll ruin the Mu family and leave me with absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. The book's description of the corporate war is purely superficial, lacking any real details. It doesn't explain the specifics of his moves. I didn't even know what kind of ruthless methods Hugh actually used. People might forget the details, but a life of luxury is a story in itself. Being rich is so sweet that I can't think about anything else. I refuse to let my family go bankrupt, no matter what happens. I got up, got dressed, and headed down to the company headquarters. I made my way down the stairs. The divorce agreement was right there, sitting on the coffee table. Without a second thought, I grabbed the pen and signed it. It felt heavy in my hand. Hesitating for even a second would be a waste of time. A total lack of respect for the divorce itself. Once the signature was dry, I pulled Hugh Kingen's card from my bag and dropped it on the papers. Then, I gathered my things. The only items that actually mattered to the original owner. I left that place for good and headed back to the Mu family estate. I wasn't going to be some tragic villain anymore. I wanted to be something else. The true protagonist of my own life. My father saw me walk through the door, barely recognizing his own son. He immediately dropped his newspaper and rushed over to greet me. "Chin-Chun, what's wrong? Why are you back at this hour? Did that Hugh Kingen do something to you?" I looked at him and simply said, "No." My father pressed for an answer. "Are you sure?" he asked, holding my hand with a look of hesitation. Normally, I'd be busy at this hour delivering lunch to Hugh Kingen. How could I have ever forgotten my own family for him? My father kept talking, asking why I didn't call ahead so he could tell the servants. He wanted them to prepare all my favorite dishes. "When did you change your hair?" he asked. "It looks good. These clothes too." Even though he was over 40, he took such good care of himself that he looked 10 years younger. When he looked at me, I was the only thing in his world. He called out to Aunt Zhang, telling her not to worry about the menu. He decided he was going to cook for me himself. Every single gesture radiated the pure joy of seeing his son again. I watched him, feeling a sudden, sharp bitterness in my chest. In my past life, I never got the love I craved while I was alive. I never expected to finally receive it like this. Only after dying and waking up in another world. My father just kept smiling at me. "I'll call your mother right now, so she can join us for lunch too." Before I could stop him, he had already dialed the number. I took the opportunity to look around the house. The more I saw of it, the more I liked it. The better I felt. After my father finished the call, he took my hand again and asked me a question with deep concern. It was clear he had always worried I wasn't happy after the original Mukun got lost in his own world. Ever since I married Hugh Kingen, he had been trying to comfort me. Chinchin, if anything happens to you, you must tell your father. Your mom and I will always be your support and your refuge. I suddenly remembered when my classmates used to bully me back in my old life. When I went home to tell my real parents, they didn't show a single ounce of concern. Instead, they scolded me right there in the living room. Out of all the students in your class, they said, why are they only picking on you? Why don't they do it to the others? From that moment on, whenever I suffered, they used to bully me at school. I never dared to tell anyone. I looked up at the handsome man standing there, a warm presence in the middle of the night. He was right in front of me, and I couldn't stop thinking about the tragic end that he suffered in the original book. I couldn't help myself. I stepped forward. I hugged him tight, making a silent vow to my son. I was going to rewrite his ending. My father's body tensed up instantly. I wondered how long it had been since his son hugged him like this. Dad, I'm sorry for worrying you all these years, I said firmly. It won't happen again. His eyes softened. It had been so long since his son had truly been home. Ever since I got married, I barely ever came back. I was a stranger in my own house. And whenever I did return, it was always because of her. Hockingham. In the beginning, my father told me that forced love never works out, but I had insisted on marrying her anyway. I was their only son. When I was a child, he almost lost his life once, so they've always protected me with everything they have. But after the wedding, they watched my pride and my spark slowly fade away. I was becoming a shadow of myself. It felt like my entire world had shrunk down to just one person. Everything revolved around Hockingham, and I lost my sense of right and wrong. As a father, he saw it all, and it broke his heart every time I came home crying about her. He would stay awake, pacing all night long, worrying himself sick over me. My father let out a long, heavy sigh. I just want you to be okay, son, he whispered. I heard the lump in his voice and finally pulled back from the hug. I saw his eyes were bloodshot, and a single tear escaped. Seeing him cry made my own throat tighten up. I reached out my hand so he could see me clearly, wiping away his tears while trying to lighten the mood with a tease. Why are you crying? Look at me. I'm doing great now. He looked at me closely and said, something is different. He felt that since I returned this time, I had changed. I had changed so much, as if I had finally cast off a heavy burden. It was like the son he hadn't seen in years had finally come back home. I was finally okay. I had come back, and I wasn't alone. I brought Bane and Nino with me. Nino was the child of my mother's best friend. After her friend passed, my family took her in. It's never easy raising a child when you're already older, but my family raised her like their own daughter. They supported her every step of the way, guiding her through her life and her studies. They stayed by her side until she graduated from the university. During those years, she even helped my parents find work at the school. She worked part-time for a student group at the University of Madrid. After graduating, she became my mother's right hand. I looked at her and whispered, thank you. I caught her looking at me, her eyes filled with a familiar warmth. She was a key figure in this world. In the original story, the protagonist always saw her as a protective older sister. Back when I was still chasing after Hockingham, I used to tell Nino everything that happened between us. I told her how much I liked him and begged her for advice. The world was currently gripped by the chaos of a pandemic. Nino always stood firmly by the original protagonist's side. She acted as his protective older sister. She gets things done. She shields him from harm. She helps him the very second he needs it. She never questions him. She never holds him back. Even the people who didn't understand her methods couldn't deny her results. The readers didn't give her much thought at first, not until they realized Hockingham was a man forged in war. And then there was the original protagonist. They had finally gotten divorced. She went out to find the original protagonist. Instead, she stumbled right into the scene of his car accident. Trembling, she reached out for me, no, for him. She lifted the protagonist's broken body. Looking down at the original protagonist, covered in blood, her eyes turned red as she desperately tried to wipe it away. She wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, her eyes bloodshot with grief. She looked aged as she sobbed. Chun, I regret it. I regret not stopping you from marrying her. The raw emotions swirling in her eyes. It was like an impenetrable dance of sorrow. In that exact moment, she didn't want to hide it anymore. She wanted him to know. She wanted the original protagonist to know that she had loved him for many years. She was desperate. She tried desperately to hold on to him, but she couldn't keep him there. She could only watch as his life slowly faded away. He was disappearing right before her eyes. That was the only psychological description of her character in the entire book. It was her most brilliant moment, leaving the readers shocked and moved. They felt her regret deep in their bones. But in this moment, I saw my father wave at us. Nino, come here too, he called out. The original protagonist wasn't the only one there. I knew Nino liked him, so I decided to pretend I didn't know her. I simply greeted my father, and he acknowledged me back. I acknowledged Sister Nino as well, even though the tension was thick. Even if her clothes were simple, in Hukingen she looked refined and expensive. She had this distant, untouchable aura, while in Binding Bean she looked clean and elegant. It gave off a sense of warmth and closeness. He looked at me with a hint of affection in his voice, his eyes showing a side that wasn't just a man. There was a touch of tenderness. You still lack a bit of that softness. I told him that short hair suited him well, and I meant it. Binding Bean continued with the praise, saying the clothes were nice too. I smiled, showing that my taste had actually improved. Lately, I've been changing. The original owner of this body was always so insecure whenever he was around Hyukingen, but he always found a way to trust him. He felt like himself around by Ningbin because he treated him like a little prince. I'm putting in the effort. I tried to fake that same feeling, but I only managed to pull it off about 80%. The rest was just the reality of my finances. From what I know, her secret crush makes her a bit shy. Yvonne smiled and changed the subject, asking if I was still busy sending her lunch every day. I found myself fidgeting with my watch. I toyed with my bracelet, complaining about how hot it was getting. I told her Hyukingen thought it was too hard on me to deliver food every day and forbade it. As soon as I said that, Bai Ningbin wasn't the only one who looked skeptical. Even my parents stopped their conversation, clearly not buying a word of it. The people who actually care about me don't believe Hyukingen would ever treat me well. Only the original owner of this body was ever that delusional. Bai Ningbin arched an eyebrow and asked, "Really?" She reached out and grabbed my hand, inspecting it closely. "Look at these hands," she said. "It's almost scary to think they can even cook." I looked down as she raised her eyes to meet mine. Her gaze was warm and soft, filled with a gentle kindness. She told me they were beautiful and that a boy's hands should look exactly like this. I wasn't sure if it was because of her secret crush on the original owner, but even just chatting with her made me feel a strange heat rising in my chest. If I weren't careful, I'd be acting even shyer than the original guy. Back in the clubs, I had no problem being around women because there were no feelings involved. I didn't have to be responsible for anyone's heart. But when it comes to real emotions, I'm a complete novice with zero experience. I have no idea how to handle this kind of pure, secret love. To hide my nerves, I quickly changed the subject and asked how the company was doing. Bai Ningbin spoke with total indifference, saying things were going well enough. But I wasn't about to let it go, so I kept pushing for details. She looked at me, surprised, and explained they were bidding on some major projects. If they landed them, the company could finally move up to the next level, though taking on such big contracts would tie up all their capital. If that capital chain snaps while the Hugh family watches from the sidelines, is this their strategy to ruin us economically? I interrupted her, asking if Hyukingen's company was involved. A firm like his could easily swallow up several major projects at once. The current market environment isn't exactly stable right now. I told her the most important thing for the company was to prioritize stability and cash flow. I was trying to warn her without being too obvious, but she just stared at me. There was a hint of scrutiny in her eyes as she asked, "Since when did you start caring about the family business?" She was right. The original owner never gave a damn about company affairs. I caught myself and started fiddling with the diamond on my watch. I told her I'd been spending too much time around Hyukingen's business, and I must have learned a few things by osmosis. Bai Ningbin went silent, so I looked her in the eye to drive the point home. I told her that she and my mother needed to consider the timing very carefully. The project's scope, especially since they need to weigh everything carefully and decide if they can actually handle the risks involved. Bai Ningbin stared at me intently. She was searching for something hidden deep in my expression as she asked, "Did you hear something from Hyukingen that makes you want us to quit? Is he planning to fund the competition and hand the project to them?" The original Myukin was a love-struck fool who begged his family to help Hyukingen, so my sudden interference was suspicious. It was natural for her to be on guard, but I couldn't let her keep thinking that way. I shook my head and said, "No, it's not that. Lately, I've been having this recurring dream." I told her I dreamt the family business went bankrupt, but she just looked at me with pure disbelief. I hesitated, glanced at my parents nearby, and then leaned in close to her. I covered my mouth with my hand and whispered, "Actually, I overheard Hyukingen. He said he wanted to ruin the Bai family." I pulled back immediately after saying it. Then I noticed Bai Ningbin's ears turning bright red from the proximity. I awkwardly pretended not to notice and continued my explanation in a low voice. "I'm terrified my parents won't be able to handle the truth, so I haven't dared to tell them. I don't understand business, so I can only leave this matter in your hands." Bai Ningbin leaned her elbow against the back of the sofa. She casually pinched her ear while looking at me and asked, "And what about you? What do you plan to do?" Before I could even open my mouth, my father walked over. He called us both to the table for dinner. Seeing the table overflowing with delicacies made me feel like I was finally home. It felt amazing. My father piled food onto my plate and said, "Eat more. You've lost weight lately." I stared at the feast and swallowed hard. I was starving for a home-cooked meal. I figured if I stayed at home for just a few more days, I would definitely gain all that weight back. My father wouldn't hear of it and kept adding more food to my plate. "If you want to eat home cooking every day, I'll have someone deliver it to you," he offered. I quickly explained, "No, that's not necessary. I'm going to be living here at home from now on." For a split second, my mother, my father, and Bai Ningbin all froze. They stopped moving and stared at me in total shock. I put down my chopsticks and looked back at them with a dead serious expression. "Mom, Dad, I'm planning to divorce Hyukingen. I thought I could make him love me, but I know now that you can't force the heart. I don't want to love him anymore. I just want to come back and be with you." I said it naturally, without a hint of sadness or regret in my voice. But the original owner's obsession with Hyukingen ran deep. It was etched into the very memory of the Bai family. My mother and father just stared at me. They didn't believe a single word I was saying. To them, my devotion to that man was absolute. The original owner's feelings were rooted too firmly in their minds. I could see the doubt lingering in their eyes. They probably expected me to go running back to him by tomorrow. My parents kept watching me, waiting for the punchline. They refused to take my declaration seriously. I'm quitting him, I repeated. I'm done. Did they really think I was just playing around? Did they think I'd just talk nonsense and change my mind later? Why aren't you saying anything? Do you not want me back home? I waited for my father to snap out of it. Finally, he smiled and pushed my favorite dishes toward me again. How could that be? Of course you can stay. I just want to be by my father's side again. My father looked so happy that things weren't as difficult as he feared. But it wasn't over yet. My mother picked up her phone and immediately transferred another $10 million to my account. She sent it straight to my card without a second thought. She told me that if I ever felt like going back to my old hobbies, I should just do it. She wanted me to enjoy my life and see the world. My mother would give her very life for me if she had to. She was more than willing to support me for the rest of my years. Even if I had 10 lives, I could never repay the warmth of this family. They are the kind of parents who truly, deeply love their children. And parents who don't love their children like this, I can't even imagine them. Finding parents who care this much is truly rare. I watched my father continue to pile my favorite food onto the same spot. He kept filling my plate without stopping for a single second. Then I looked at the notification for the money. This was how my mother preferred to show her affection. I suddenly remembered my own past. I thought about my real parents from my previous life, the ones I hadn't seen since I was just a young child. Back then, the delicious food at home was never for me. They always gave the best pieces to my younger brother. He was their favorite, the one they pampered. The moment I reached out with my chopsticks, my mother would swat them away. I wanted to go to university so badly that I cried for an entire year. I begged for a day and a night, but she wouldn't budge. My parents simply refused to agree to it. They told me I had two choices, go to work or get married. Trying to find a job out there without a degree is a nightmare. But they never cared if I was suffering or not. All they cared about was how much money I could earn for them. They looked at me with disgust whenever I brought home a small paycheck. They didn't raise me. They held me hostage for my labor. They used parental kindness as a weapon to bleed me dry. I bet they wouldn't have shed a single tear if I had died. My eyes started to well up as I looked at the couple in front of me. I looked at my new parents, the ones who actually loved me. I whispered a silent thank you in my heart. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom. I promise to love you with everything I have from now on. In the original story, after the Moo family eventually goes bankrupt, my mother couldn't handle the shock. The realization that her own daughter-in-law was the mastermind behind their ruin was too much. Her body just gave out. Her blood pressure spiked so high that it caused a massive cerebral hemorrhage. She never woke up again, ending up in a vegetative state. My father couldn't bear the sight of it. Watching his wife waste away like a lifeless doll broke him. Between that and the death of his son, he fell into a deep depression and took his own life. I'm going to change all of that, starting with filling their plates today. Just as I was about to set down my chopsticks, I noticed Baining Bean watching me with a look of pure jealousy. He looked like a kid competing for his parents' affection, pouting as he asked, "What about me?" I just smirked and handed him a piece of meat, the fattiest cut I knew he hated. Meanwhile, over at the story group, Yao walked into the president's office with a folder in hand. "Mr. Mukin won't be coming to deliver lunch today," Yao said as the president glanced at the clock, realizing I was already late. In the past, I was so terrified she would actually divorce me that I didn't even dare to cry while I slaved away for her. I never missed a single day of bringing her food. The president lifted his eyes from his desk, staring at Yao with a cold, indifferent expression. "What's wrong? Have you become addicted to his cooking? You want it so bad? Should I just give him to you?" Yao froze, realizing he had overstepped by asking about me. He quickly tried to explain that there was no issue with the situation. No, sir, I was just mentioning it casually." The truth was, Yao was the one suffering the most. Every single lunch I used to bring for the president always ended up in Yao's stomach instead. He had grown completely accustomed to my cooking over the years. This was the first time I hadn't shown up without a word. He was dying of curiosity and couldn't help but ask. Seeing the president's growing irritation, he quickly grabbed the documents that needed an immediate signature. He left the room, leaving the president alone in the silence. It was rare for her to finish a day's work without me being there to bother her. The image of me in that black suit from last night flashed in her mind. The cold look in my eyes as I demanded a divorce still haunting her. She curled her lip in annoyance and headed straight for the club. The moment she walked into the private VIP room, everyone stared at her. She sat on the sofa, eyes narrowing as they kept gawking at her. "What are you all looking at? Are you sick?" she snapped. Qin Yao leaned in cautiously, testing the waters. "We're just shocked because Mukin isn't trailing behind you today." The president shot them a look that could freeze blood. "Weren't you all complaining about him following us before?" "Well, yeah, but now that he's actually gone, it's weird. Isn't this exactly what you wanted? Stop being masochists." Qin Yao poured her a glass of wine, watching her expression closely. "We're just worried you've lost your touch with people." As her best friends, they knew the situation better than anyone. They had seen how I used to follow her everywhere like a shadow. I was the type who would never even step foot in a nightclub. I was never the type to go looking for female models. And I certainly wouldn't leave the guys behind, or leave Huking unattended just to head into the city. Especially not for a trip to Sanya. It seemed like I truly didn't care anymore. Huking scanned their faces, all wearing the same shocked expression. Seeing her face darken, she snapped that she couldn't see a thing. She told them if their eyes were useless, they should just donate them. Someone finally intervened, saying, "Hey, take it easy. It's fine if you don't care. Come on, everyone, let's have a toast together." To celebrate Kingan's brief escape from her sea of bitterness, Kingan drained her glass, ignoring them until Qin Yao pulled out her phone. "Miss Ju, even if Mukun forced you to marry him and hurt your pride, his looks and his status aren't actually that bad. In fact, they're more than enough. How could you not touch him for 2 whole years? Back when I only had eyes for Hukingen, I had all her friends' contact info. That meant they could all see my social media posts. Before, my feed was nothing but her. Every single post was about her. Everything revolved around Hukingen. I was either showing her off or declaring my undying loyalty. I used to write long essays about how much I loved her. I did it even though I knew she had blocked my updates. Her friends used to take those posts and send them to her parents' house. They'd share them in group chats just to mock me. That was my life for 2 years. But a few hours ago, everything changed. They discovered I had deleted every single trace of her and her family. I wiped Hukingen from my feed and posted something new. I shared moments from my arrival in Sanya. Beautiful photos of the sunset. Over the Sanya coastline. I posted 9 photos with a simple caption. "Seeing the most beautiful scenery with the person who loves me the most." What a perfect moment. Hukingen saw everyone staring at their phones and took a look herself. She saw a photo of me smiling. I looked genuinely happy on that beach, and her friends noticed I had changed. One of them chimed in, saying I looked like I was finally moving on. Then, Zhou Jinyao clicked her tongue at the screen. She looked annoyed. "This is what a man looks like when he's truly done with someone," she said. With a sudden crash, Hukingen slammed her wine glass down. The liquid splashed everywhere. She stared at the table with a grim, cold expression. Her face was a mask of shadows. "Are you all sick?" she snapped. She stood up and walked out. "We came here to drink, and all you people do is hug your phones and talk about him." She couldn't stand hearing my name anymore. Hukingen stormed out and climbed into her car. She ripped open the top button of her shirt in frustration. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She scrolled through her contacts and searched for my updates. Only then did she realize I had actually left. I was really on a trip to Sanya. She stared at the photo of my clear, bright eyes. My eyes were filled with smiles. I was laughing, and it looked like light was overflowing from within me. Whether it was my profile with my head held high or the way I looked at the camera, every single movement revealed pure happiness. You could see the beauty of the whole world reflected in my eyes. I looked pure and full of life. I gave off a sense of total peace and tranquility. This was me, the man I used to be. She didn't feel love for me, only rage toward everyone else. She was still acting like the master of my life. Real love is undeniable. It's jealous, it's maddening, and it's completely irrational. A person doesn't just change overnight. Hukingen simply refused to accept it. She didn't believe the man in those photos was the real me. Others might not know the truth, but she thought she did. She convinced herself I was just acting out, that I was only doing this to avoid mentioning the divorce. Posting my travel photos online was just a front. She thought I was putting on a show just to make myself feel better. She thought I was doing all this just to please her. But I knew my real purpose. Even so, the feeling was undeniable. I was drawn to these simple photos of my first trip ever. I sent out a greeting to the world. This was the one place that I wanted to visit most. While I was still alive, a cool breeze blew as we enjoyed a midnight feast. We had fresh seafood paired with red wine. Mom was right there with me, eating and enjoying the night view. Looking at the beach, I had one thought. The world is so beautiful. I want to see it while I'm still alive, and my money is finally mine to spend. Before, it was never enough. I never had the chance to experience a life like this. There was nothing beautiful in my world worth recording. Now, I feel like there are so many wonders worth capturing, like my own story. I looked down at our late-night meal. It was delicious. It tasted just like a mother's love. It felt like a brand new experience. The next morning was even more special. I told Mom I wanted to go diving. She didn't hesitate to hire a private instructor for me. He took me down to explore the depths and enjoy the view. I was mesmerized by the beauty of the coral reefs. Schools of fish swirled around me in every direction. I felt completely relaxed and happy. The sky was a deep blue, and the water was even bluer. The ocean was crystal clear as the wind brushed past. I spent my entire morning diving deep under the surface. By the afternoon, I was out on the waves surfing. It was pure bliss. After a long shower, I finally headed to bed. As the night settled in, I lay down and picked up my phone. I saw a message from my old informant in Iguazu. He had sent me the latest scandal involving the Gon family. I stared at the screen and felt my brow furrow. It was all happening at the same time. I felt a surge of anxiety for them. I just wanted to keep them informed. I didn't want to know anything else about him. Bane and Nevin suddenly gave me a look. "Are you having fun?" they asked. I answered them directly. "I'm happy," I said, feeling the vibe. She had also just stepped out of the house. She was fresh from the shower, still drying off. She rubbed her hair with a soft towel. Because she had just finished bathing, there was a new kind of depth in her eyes. Her skin looked clearer and more radiant than ever. Her lips were a striking, vibrant red. They practically glowed. She looked mature, yet possessed a touch of youthful innocence. She was gentle as jade, brimming with feminine charm. I could barely keep my own desires in check. But Bane and Nevin just kept going. "Speaking of which, I want to come too," he said. I replied grumpily. Just work hard and stay put. I glanced at the bathroom and heard my mother still showering. I lowered my voice and said, what I told you last time wasn't a joke. The Jew group is going to break with the Mu group soon. You need to be prepared in advance, because the company depends on it. Bain stopped what he was doing and looked at me intently. Aren't you afraid I'm like Hyukingen? He asked. What if I'm just looking for a way to take over the company too? I looked back at him firmly, without a hint of fear. I believe in you, I said simply. Bain's eyes softened, glowing with a slight warmth. I didn't expect that to move him so much, so I cut the conversation short. All right, it's late, I'm going to sleep. Bain replied in a low voice, don't forget to bring me a gift. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes. The next morning, Hyukingen woke up and immediately checked his phone. The trending searches were still there, mocking him. He couldn't resist opening my social media profile again. He saw that I had updated my status just 5 minutes ago. It was a video. In the footage, I was wearing a crisp, refreshing shirt. I was standing right there on the sand, right by the shore. The blue sky was still holding onto the soft evening light. Then it shifted to the glow of the morning sun. I was laughing freely in the shot. The wind was dancing all around me, tossing my hair back and forth. It caught the hem of my clothes, making them flutter. Every now and then, I would say something to the camera. I looked like the living embodiment of pure happiness, making the beautiful scenery behind me lose all its luster by comparison. I hadn't returned, I was still traveling, and if I had time to post on my social media feed, there was no way I hadn't seen the trending searches, yet I hadn't come back to the city. In fact, I looked happier than ever. Hyukingen let out a bitter, angry laugh and snapped. He grabbed his phone and hurled it across the room. This time, I really do have potential. He wants to see just how much longer I can hold out. His schedule for the day was packed. By the time night rolled around, he was back at the hotel, completely drained. He collapsed onto the sofa, staring at the warm light as the image of me riding an electric bike flashed through his mind. He grabbed his phone and checked my social media feed again. He saw that a massive crowd of people was gathered in the city center. I had updated my status a few hours ago with the caption, "In this world, only a mother's love is true." The post was a grid of 9 photos. I wasn't just out there eating local snacks. Instead, I was showing off some practical little trinkets I'd found. And right in the middle of the grid was a shot of downtown Bogota. We even bought matching sunglasses. The moment I said I wanted a divorce, my mother feared I'd be home moping over the past, so she took me on this trip to relax. She stayed by my side the entire time. She kept taking pictures of me, constantly complimenting me on how handsome I looked. She wanted to buy me every single thing she saw, anything that looked delicious, or anything that looked beautiful. She insisted I try every delicacy we passed. She just wanted to give me the best of everything. A mother like her is truly the greatest, the best mother in the world. I only wanted to show off a little, not spark a jealousy war. In the comments section, my father left a bitter message. Is Dad not good enough? He asked, so I replied, Dad is great too, but Mom bought me these. Then Nini Bean joined in on the fun. Am I not good to you? She teased. I smiled and typed back, you're my love. You're the best. The absolute best in the world. Back at the hotel, Kingen loosened his collar. That suffocating feeling still weighed heavy on him. 3 days had passed since I'd looked for her or seen her. I hadn't contacted her once in those 3 days. And yet, I was getting happier with every passing day. I had never looked so happy in my entire life. Seeing me like this made Kingen feel like she'd swallowed a fly. Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from me. The suffocating pressure in her chest vanished instantly. She thought, finally, this woman couldn't hold out any longer. She knew I couldn't stay away for long. A flicker of expectation crossed her face as she opened the chat. I got straight to the point. It's been days since the divorce papers were signed. Don't you think it's time to make it official and finish the paperwork? As she read those words, her pupils trembled in shock. Her fingers locked around the device. She gripped her phone tighter and tighter until her knuckles turned white. After a long silence, she threw the phone aside in a rage. She stormed out and drove home, no matter how late it was. The house that was always glowing with warm light was now pitch black, save for the lonely street lamps outside. She flicked on the hallway lights and stepped inside. The house was empty. No one was there waiting for her return. There it was, my card sitting right on the table. Kingen picked up the divorce agreement and slowly pulled it open. The name Myukin was written clearly across the document, the handwriting sharp and deliberate. She looked at the kitchen where I used to prep the vegetables. The paper in her hand began to crumple under her grip. Fury boiled in her eyes as she thought of the man who used to haunt this house. Just a few days ago, I was acting so jealous over her. And now, I actually wanted to leave her for good? She thought, me? Divorcing him? How is that even possible? Kingen let out a cold, incredulous scoff. Meanwhile, back at my family home, my mother was busy unpacking spices. She pulled bags of local specialties out of her luggage one by one. She started distributing the gifts to all the household servants. These are all delicious treats from Uncle Chinza, she told them. I brought them back so everyone could see what they're like. She insisted that every single person give them a taste. Everyone gathered around to receive the local delicacies. The staff smiled and thanked her, their faces lighting up with gratitude. The simple joy of sharing a meal spread through the entire house. The warmth spread through every corner of the house. My father sat back, sipping tea after finishing his meal. Baining was nearby, answering a phone call. It sounded like she was handling a business matter. Even though this mansion is massive, it didn't feel cold at all. Baining sat down right next to me and caught my eye. There was a certain softness in her gaze. I had a few expectations of my own. She was waiting for a gift from me. I knew exactly how to charm a woman like her. I didn't even need a filter to look my best. I stood up and unzipped my luggage. I pulled out 2 small night lights from the bag. One was made of delicate, fine Chinese porcelain. I remembered the time I spent working on these. I had actually crafted them with my own 2 hands. I'd found a small handicraft stall to finish the details. I looked at her and said, "Go ahead, pick whichever one you like." Baining stared at them both, her eyes shimmering. Then she asked, "And who are you giving the other one to?" I looked at her and said, "They're both for you, Baining." She smiled and gently took the night light from me. She turned the fine Chinese porcelain over in her hands, admiring it. As I finished handing out the rest of the gifts, I glanced at the lamp in her hand. I mentioned casually, "I actually made that one myself." Baining snapped her head up and looked me right in the eyes. The moment she heard those words, her expression shifted. The shock in her gaze was impossible to miss. She could barely hide how stunned she was. She whispered, "You make lamps?" The original Mukin only ever made things for his ex, Ichingon. Even though Baining had loved him for years, this was her first handmade gift. I could see the joy radiating off her, but I just gave her a cold side eye. I asked her, "What's wrong? Do you look down on it?" Baining looked at me with pure tenderness and said, "I could never look down on you." But as she stared at me, I felt something else in the air. There was a flicker of suppressed anger hidden deep in her eyes. I didn't want to get caught up in her beauty or her complicated feelings. I grabbed my phone, stood up, and told her, "I'm tired. I'm heading back to my room. I needed to get some rest." Back in my room, I checked my phone. I saw that Ichingon had finally replied. She sent a short message. 9 a.m. at the Civil Affairs Bureau. In the book, she bankrupted my family and left me with nothing. But since we're divorcing early, maybe the Mu family's fate can actually change. I was in a great mood, but I stayed inside just to be safe. I took a shower and lay down. I woke up before my alarm, dressed up for my freedom, and headed downstairs. Ichingon. She was already finished. She had eaten breakfast and left. She headed out to work for the day. At the company, Baining was there, trimming flowers. Flowers she had gathered from the back garden. When she saw me, she invited me to sit. She offered breakfast, but I made a quick excuse to leave. Planet Earth. Can I really go back after the divorce? I wanted to surprise the original owner's family. The original Mukin knew how to drive and had perfect control behind the wheel. But me? I only know how to ride a tiny electric scooter. The car I pre-ordered arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau at exactly 8:50 a.m. I pulled out my phone and called Ichingon. I told her I was already waiting outside the office. "I'll be there soon," she replied coldly. I stood under the shade of a tree until 9:30 when I finally saw her car pull up. I couldn't wait to welcome her in this divorce. I caught my reflection in the dark tint of the car window. I was wearing a crisp white shirt. It was elegant, stylish, and fit me perfectly. The top buttons were open, hinting at a solid chest beneath. I had a smile on my face and my hair was cut short and sharp. The breeze caught my hair, making me look young and full of life. I looked like a charming devil walking under the open sky. I stepped toward her car as the sunlight hit me, making me glow. Everything else around us seemed to fade into the background. I stopped at her door and tapped on the glass. Ichingon frowned, opened the door, and stepped out. Our eyes met, but I didn't look at her with the same old longing. Not a trace of sadness, not even a hint. Just a happy smile that must have felt out of place. This wasn't at all what she had predicted. Ichingon's face flashed with a look of annoyance, but she could see it. I had become a completely different man. At that moment, Ichingon was finally certain. I was actually going to divorce her. She stared at my back, remembering the day she was forced to marry me. Even though more than 2 years had passed since that day. 2 long, bitter years. The memory was still there. It was as clear as yesterday, a weight she couldn't shake. Being forced to marry me was the ultimate humiliation for her. From the very second we were wed, she had been counting down the days until her liberation. And now the day was here, but I was the one walking away first. I took a few steps toward the entrance and noticed something. She was still standing by the car, just frozen in the exact same spot. I frowned and turned back to face her. "What's the matter?" I saw her just staring at me. She didn't say a single word. Suddenly, I got a bad feeling. Don't tell me she forgot the documents. You came here to get a divorce. And you didn't even bring the paperwork? I bit my tongue and kept pushing, telling her to hurry up and not worry. I told her to have someone bring them, but Ichingon just ignored me coldly. She remained silent, so I stared back, speechless. Why was she just watching me? Only then did Ichingon show any emotion. She slowly raised her hand. She turned her wrist and checked the time. Finally, she opened her mouth and said, "I have a meeting at 10 o'clock. We'll talk about the divorce later," she added, but I rushed to interrupt. "Since we were already here, why make another trip? Postpone the meeting, and let's finish the paperwork now." I wasn't about to let this chance slip away. The variables for next time were just too high. I didn't want to wait. I had to end this once and for all. I scoffed. Everyone postpones meetings for important matters. It was obvious that her professional network wasn't actually that critical. But the moment I finished speaking, Ichingon's face shifted, looking at me as if I'd committed an unforgivable sin. Her gaze was cold enough to freeze anyone in their tracks. "Thank you so much for your input," she said sarcastically. Do you really think your personal drama is as important as the company? You think you matter more than the lives of tens of thousands of people. The livelihoods of my employees aren't as important as your divorce. You overestimate yourself. I stood there, absorbing her venom. I was stunned for a good 2 seconds. Her scolding caught me completely off guard. This woman is the ultimate hypocrite. She acts so high and mighty. She has no problem delaying things when it suits her. But if I ask her to postpone a meeting, she acts like I'm asking for the world. Suddenly, one missed meeting is going to ruin the lives of tens of thousands of employees? Give me a break. Besides, this divorce is my business too. Is it only her business? Hee-Chin-gon didn't even give me time to react. She just stormed off after scolding me. We were supposed to get divorced, but she didn't even bring the documents. She was the one who showed up late, clearly. I should be the angry one, but she pulled a face and slammed the car door. I was so ready to celebrate my newfound freedom. I was going to post about being single on all my social media. I had already thought about where I'd go to have some fun. I had the whole night planned out, but it wasn't happening. I went back defeated, stopped at the supermarket, and bought a mountain of snacks. Then I headed to the GU Group office. When Hee-Chin-gon finally returned from her meeting, she found me sitting on her office sofa. I was just scrolling through my phone. I had a spicy snack stick hanging out of my mouth. The entire office smelled like spicy oil. A mountain of snacks sat on the coffee table, chips, chicken feet, and more. There was lechiao too, stuff I wouldn't have even touched before. Hee-Chin-gon frowned, her face twisted in pure disgust. How did you get in? She asked, while I was busy snacking. I kept my eyes on my phone, chewing on a spicy stick, and said, I came to wait for you. Hee-Chin-gon paused, looked around, and walked back toward her desk. She sat down and stared me dead in the eye. Wait for me for what? She demanded. There I was, eating junk food and playing games without a care in the world. I wasn't acting like a refined young heir anymore. This version of me was a total stranger to her. I finally looked up from my phone. We couldn't finish the paperwork this morning, I reminded her. The divorce papers. I know you're busy, so I'll wait here until you're done. Then we can go back. Hee-Chin-gon narrowed her eyes at me coldly. She loosened her collar slightly and said, I don't have time today. I looked at her again, feeling a sudden wave of doubt. Hee-Chin-gon picked up the documents sitting to the side. I have a feeling she's regretting it. This CEO with a net worth of billions. How could she not find the time? If she actually wanted this divorce. But then again, why would she regret it? She's disgusted by me. She hated the original owner of this body, like he was some villain. Isn't this freedom? Hasn't she tormented me enough already? The female lead in the book never said it, but her attitude is shifting. She's still carrying that grudge from when I forced her to marry me. The more I craved her love, the more she wanted to see me suffer. Now that I want out, does she want me to feel the pain of being trapped? I stood up, the anger boiling over inside me. I was done playing nice and waiting for her permission. I told her, if you don't come with me to finish this in 3 days, I'm filing a lawsuit. I wasn't negotiating with her anymore. I was serving her notice. After dropping that bombshell, I grabbed my bag and headed straight for the exit. I was just about to walk out the door when Shin pushed the office door open and stepped inside. The moment he saw me, a flash of pure terror hit his eyes. He tried to back away and scrambled to get out of my path. He started to stammer. Did I come at a bad time? I stopped him right there and said, no, you're right on time. The male lead of this novel looked so fresh and obedient, with a fragile frame that made you want to protect him. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. He was a character born into a tragic life. His father was a hopeless, hardcore gambler. His mother's health had completely failed her back when he was still in school. By high school, his father was using him as collateral for debts. When they were about to sell him off, Hee-Chin-yen saved him and shielded him from the storm. He wanted to enter the entertainment industry, so she signed him to her company. She turned him into a superstar. He was the true male lead of this story. That innocent mask of his was perfect. He played the part of the victim so well. He had a very clear view of how the world worked. From the moment Hee-Chin-yen saved him, he had fallen for her. He was obsessed with her, but she hadn't even realized it yet. He always felt like he wasn't good enough for her. He didn't even dare to confess his feelings. He wanted to work harder. He wanted to be excellent. He wanted to be worthy of her, even after Hee-Chin-yen was forced to marry me. Even though he loved Hee-Chin-yen in his heart, he stayed true to his principles and refused to be the other man. He kept his distance, making sure he never crossed the line. He maintained a strict friendship with her throughout the novel. The story was written from his perspective, making my predecessor look like a villain. The love between the two leads was the core of the entire plot. Their mutual, secret pining was a huge draw for the readers. He earned the infinite pity and support of the audience. While the original owner of this body, the evil husband, was nothing but an unstable obstacle. I explained to him calmly, we just finished talking about the divorce, but she doesn't have time for the papers today. I was just about to leave. I glanced at Hee-Chin-yen and then at Chen-Zhe. I forced a smile and said, take your time, I won't disturb you, as I walked past him. That's when I felt it clearly. Chen-Zhe was visibly flinching away from me. It's no wonder he's afraid. The original me was a total monster to him. She always considered him her greatest friend. But to my predecessor, he was the other man destroying my marriage. The original me would try to teach him a lesson or even hire thugs to jump him. I stepped out of the office and closed the door softly behind me. Chen-Zhe didn't move, staring me down as I made my exit. Through the crack in the door, I saw him looking at Hee-Chin-yen with a somber face. He walked over with the gifts he brought and sat in a very specific spot. As he set the bags down, his eyes fell on the desk. He saw the pen still gripped tightly in He Qingyan's hand. She had accidentally stained a corner of the divorce papers with ink. He Qingyan looked up at him and asked, "Why are you here?" Chenzhe forced a smile and placed the bag on the table. "The local specialties from Jianshan are great, so I brought you some. It's a thank you for helping my mother find a specialist." He Qingyan looked at him, her expression tightly controlled. I was finally divorcing her, and I walked away with a light heart. On my way out, I ran into Su Yao, who used to be a close friend of mine. She was heading toward He Qingyan's office to get a document signed. I took a step forward and blocked her path immediately. "Your manager Gu is busy with important business right now. Wait for Chenzhe to come out before you go in with those documents." Su Yao's eyes drifted toward the office door. She looked at the entrance, then turned her gaze back to me. She looked completely bewildered by my sudden change in attitude. I wasn't being rude. I was just making sure their private time went undisturbed. I reached into my bag and offered Su Yao a snack. She must have been hungry because she couldn't resist taking the pickled chicken feet. I kept giving her instructions as she started eating. "In the future, try to use a little more common sense. Don't go barging in to bother her whenever Chenzhe comes to visit." I dropped that final line and walked away without looking back. I was playing matchmaker for them just to satisfy my own goals. The more they fell for each other, the faster He Qingyan would sign those papers. A contested divorce is a nightmare. I needed proof that our marriage was dead. After Chenzhe finally left, Su Yao walked into the office with the documents. She couldn't help herself and decided to be a little nosy. She asked, "Do you know what your husband just told me?" He Qingyan looked up from her desk, her eyes cold and sharp. Su Yao continued, "He said I should only come in after Chenzhe leaves, and that I should never disturb you too when he comes to find you." He Qingyan slammed a document down on the desk. Her face was a mask of pure rage. "Does he pay your salary, or do I?" she demanded. Su Yao fumbled to catch the document as it slid toward her, but she couldn't stop herself from talking. "Don't you feel like Myukin has changed? He's not even jealous anymore. It's like he's actually trying to set you up with Chenzhe." He Qingyan stared her down with a cold, dangerous smile. The expression barely touched the corners of her lips. "Have you been getting too comfortable lately?" she asked softly. "Maybe you have too much free time on your hands." Su Yao shut her mouth instantly. She grabbed the signed documents and bolted out of the office. He Qingyan tapped her fountain pen against the mahogany desk. The forced smile she had been wearing vanished completely. The warmth left her face, and the corners of her mouth turned cold and hard. Her gaze sharpened, focusing with a predatory intensity. Meanwhile, I finished saying goodbye to my brother. I walked out of the office building, noticing it was already almost noon. I hailed a taxi and headed straight home to have lunch with my mother. While eating, I looked up a nearby driving school online. I needed to get behind the wheel as soon as possible. I called to inquire, thinking about all those luxury cars sitting in the garage. It was torture just looking at them and not being able to touch them. The original owner of this body had a license, but I didn't have his muscle memory. I just needed to actually learn how to drive, and a private training field was the best way. I made my decision right then. I hung up the phone immediately. I called for a car and headed straight to the driving school. I followed a very simple principle. Money makes miracles happen. The manager assigned me a top-tier instructor with a perfect professional attitude. She was there specifically to give me one-on-one lessons. We started the session right away. I have to say, you really do get what you pay for. The service was impeccable. I even felt like a total idiot. Completely and utterly hopeless. But after spending the whole afternoon there, my beautiful instructor didn't show a hint of frustration, not even a single spark of anger. She kept encouraging me the entire time. She comforted me and gave me a massive boost, a total emotional recharge. By the time the afternoon was over, I finally got the hang of the basics. To show my appreciation for her patience, I invited her out to dinner once we were finished. Right as I was finishing up, Su Yao sent me a text message. "Myukin, we were wrong about what happened last time. We want to make it up to you tonight. We're hosting a dinner to give you a sincere apology." I paused for a moment. I grabbed my coat and headed out. 20 minutes later, I walked into the restaurant and saw a familiar face smiling radiantly. I was shamelessly flirting with a woman. I told her that someone like her, with her stunning looks and such a perfect figure, was clearly destined for a limitless future. Could a young lady like you really waste your talent as an instructor? I had just found out she wasn't actually a driving instructor, but the daughter of the driving school's owner. Because they were short-staffed, her mother forced her to help out. And that's how she ended up teaching me. I couldn't help but laugh, but then I felt a sudden, icy glare. I looked up and saw He Qingyan standing there with a face like thunder. Before I could even get a word out, He Qingyan moved in. She grabbed me and yanked me straight out of the building. She pinned me against the car and hissed, "Myukin, we aren't even divorced yet, and you're already out here chasing wild women? Who gave you the guts?" I looked at this furious woman. What a waste of a pretty face and a nasty temper. I rubbed my wrist and asked, "What wild woman? I'm just having a normal dinner. Don't talk nonsense." I snapped, but He Qingyan just glared at me like she wanted to kill me. "If you think you're blind, there's nothing I can do to help you." He Qingyan's eyes narrowed to slits. She let out a cold, mocking sneer. She grabbed my jaw and forced me to look her in the eye with the grip of a tyrant. "Myukin, do you think this is 2 years ago? That I'll just endure everything you do? From now on, things are different between us. I gave her a deliberate, provocative look, making sure she felt the sting. Every woman is the same once the lights go out. You aren't indispensable. He Qingwan's face turned instantly pale with rage, looking as dark as if it had been dipped in ink as she ground her teeth. She threw her handkerchief aside and laughed furiously, daring me to try her. Isn't that exactly what I'm doing? But you interrupted me. If you're done, I'm going back inside to rest. I realized my phone was still sitting back at the restaurant table. I brushed my hair back, seeing that He Qingwan wasn't going to stop me this time. I walked back inside, leaving her fuming in the parking lot. But the moment I sat down, I realized there was a problem with my device. I picked it up and saw that the screen was completely blank. He Qingwan told me there was nothing left to be done. She sent over a video file, and the moment I opened it, my face went pale as I saw the evidence of Yuan Zhu hiring a hitman to kidnap Chun. It was all there, cold, hard evidence. The footage showed Yuan Zhu pushing someone with brute force, shoving them directly into the path of oncoming traffic. It was clear evidence of the car accident she caused. There were even security recordings from around the neighborhood. She had gathered proof of my own people being involved too. If she decided to use this against me and take it to court, I'd be hauled off to the police station in handcuffs immediately. These videos alone would be more than enough. They could lock me up for years, and I realized He Qingwan hadn't revealed them before because she feared for her family's reputation. She was worried about the fallout for the Mu family. But now that she's finally playing this card, it seems like she has nothing left to lose. She isn't afraid of the family name anymore. Then my phone rang. I've had a few good days since I got here, but I didn't transmigrate just to rot in a prison cell. Found them, didn't she? He Qingwan sent me a message. I'll give you 2 minutes. Get up here and be obedient. He Qingwan. She really wants to use this to threaten me. I wasn't about to just roll over, but I wanted to go to prison even less. Wang Xiaoyu saw my face go pale and poured me a glass of water, asking what was wrong. I told her, I'm sorry, something came up. I have to go. I told her to take her time eating, quickly paid the bill, and headed upstairs. I had to find He Qingwan. As soon as Su Jinyan stepped away, she made her move. She arrived at the private booth. She looked at He Qingwan and the screen in front of the car. She snapped a photo and shared it with her sisters at the club. From her angle, it looked like He Qingwan was dominating me, acting all intimate with me. Then, everyone else joined in. They went to the window and saw me leaving without looking back. They were convinced He Qingwan had just forced someone's hand. The crowd hadn't even dispersed yet. I don't love her at all, not even a little bit. I finally arrived at the room. Jin Yao immediately went to greet her and pour the wine. Nobody even mentioned my name. When I opened the door, the 3 of them looked stunned. Su Jin Yao was sharp, though. She quickly stood up and offered me her seat. It was right next to He Qingwan, where she was setting out new silverware. I forced a smile and raised my hand. I gave them a casual wave to say hello. Hey there, I said, looking straight at them. I walked directly toward her. All 3 of them were staring at me now. Then their eyes shifted back to He Qingwan. Just like that, the video evidence was gone. They ignored me and started whispering, making me grit my teeth. I grabbed my chopsticks and stabbed through the paper. I tore the plastic wrap right off the dinner set. Then, I leaned in closer to He Qingwan. I lowered my voice and asked her what she meant by that. He Qingwan just curled her lips into a cold, mocking smile. She wanted me to know that I didn't matter at all. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached and my arms stiffened. I clenched my fists, thinking, this woman is unbelievable. Aside from torturing me, she clearly has no other hobbies. I forced a fake smile and lifted my chopsticks toward them. I served her food and said, of course, wife, if you tell me to go east, I'll never go west. I continued, if you tell me to warm the bed, I won't just warm it, I'll make sure it's burning up. He Qingwan didn't say a word. She just shot me a sharp sideways glance. She set her empty wine glass down on the table. I immediately refilled it, putting all that practice from the car to use. It was late afternoon and I was starving, but she still hadn't said a word to me. Since she wasn't asking for anything, I just started eating on my own with total delight. Once I finished my dinner, I realized everyone in the room was staring at me. They just kept watching, so I casually served myself another portion. I looked at them as if I were about to offer them a link to the recipe. For a split second, I thought I saw a faint smile on her face. I looked at the group and asked, you guys want some? I'll serve you. The others looked even more shocked, since I usually only have eyes for He Qingwan. I was actually about to serve them food. But a second later, I heard He Qingwan speak up. She usually hates it when I serve her, but now she asked, do you like helping people that much? Then help me peel this plate of shrimp. I love eating them. My fists tightened again. This woman is something else. I didn't even want to peel them for myself, let alone her. I forced a smile, sat back down, and looked at her. I kept grinning, but the warmth had long since vanished. That smile definitely didn't reach my eyes. Of course, wife, I said, reaching for the dish. I pulled the plate of shrimp toward me. As I peeled them, I racked my brain for a way out of this situation. I was tired of her holding threats over my head. I wanted this over once and for all, and I got lost in my own head. I was so deep in thought that I didn't notice what I was doing. Without thinking, I popped an extra shrimp right into my own mouth. All 3 of them stared at me in dead silence. Then they slowly turned their gaze toward He Qingwan. The air was thick with gossip as she watched me eat the shrimp meant for her. Right into my stomach. I felt a dark, heavy pressure building in the room. But I just kept eating until the plate was almost empty. I could feel the sheer weight of her gaze on me. Then the reality of my situation finally hit me. She gave me a death stare, and that's when I finally reacted. I quickly grabbed the very last shrimp, the one I was about to put in my own mouth, and shoved it into hers. "I'm just tasting them for you to make sure they're safe," I lied. "See, not poisoned." He Qingwan was forced to eat it before she could even process what happened. She instinctively started to chew. The coldness in her eyes seemed to soften just a fraction. Before, she wouldn't even notice when I served her food. But now, with me feeding her directly, she actually seemed to enjoy it. Suddenly, everyone at the table started cheering. Su Jingyao raised her glass and teased, "TSK, TSK, TSK. When you two flaunt your affection like this, do you ever think of us singles?" I looked at them, completely baffled. Do these people have a seriously twisted idea of what showing affection looks like? I was barely holding back my rage, unable to stand their constant teasing. But I had no choice but to keep up the act. I had to look like I was desperately trying to win her over again. Zhou Jinyao toyed with her glass, her expression souring. She clearly had a bit of a temper. "She's so difficult to please," she muttered. "Maybe you should consider finding someone else." I ignored her and focused on the task at hand. I shoved another peeled shrimp into He Qingwan's mouth. I looked at her tenderly, as if she were the only woman in the world. I leaned in and whispered, "She might be hard to please, but she's beautiful, and I happen to like that she's beautiful." I praised her distant nature and how she always carries herself, not to mention her incredible body. He Qingwan stared at my face as I fed her those lies with a smile. On the surface I was charming, but inside, I was grinding my teeth in frustration. A shadow of a smile actually flickered across her cold eyes. I couldn't help but curse her internally. What a total pervert. Once we finished the meal and stepped out of the building, leaving the restaurant behind, the tension was still thick in the air. I was already thinking about heading back to my own place. Suddenly, He Qingwan tossed the car keys right at me. She had been drinking and couldn't drive, and she knew the original Mukin had a license. I couldn't refuse, so I just went along with it. He Qingwan made herself comfortable in the back seat. I was forced to act as her reluctant chauffeur. I gritted my teeth, thankful I had at least learned how to drive in my past life. But being a rookie on these roads was unavoidable. I was nervous driving at night, so I focused entirely and drove incredibly slow. He Qingwan leaned back against the seat, watching me. There I was, driving her expensive car through the night. I was piloting a luxury machine at the speed of a farm tractor. She probably thought I was plotting something again. She let out a frustrated laugh and asked, "Can you go any slower?" My hands were sweating on the wheel, and I couldn't handle any distractions. I snapped back, "Don't talk to me right now." He Qingwan's face darkened instantly as she hissed, "Mukin, have you forgotten who you are?" The very next second, the car suddenly surged forward. It shot down the road like a released arrow. The engine roared as the car began to go faster and faster. My brain went completely numb. Everything went blank for a split second. The car jerked violently. The sudden change in speed caught me off guard. I was driving like a total reckless maniac. There was a car right in front of us, but I wasn't slowing down. It felt like I was dragging us both straight toward the grave. He Qingwan's face turned pale with terror. She screamed, "Mukin, are you insane? Hurry up and hit the brakes." I panicked and slammed my foot down on the pedal. But then, the horrifying realization hit me. I had confused the accelerator with the brake. I tried to correct it, desperate to find the right pedal, but it was already too late. I sat there, completely stunned and frozen. I heard a deafening crash, and the world suddenly tore apart. Everything went silent until I finally came to, my head and neck throbbing with pain. I heard He Qingwan through gritted teeth, her voice trembling with rage. She forced my name out of her throat. "Mukin." I looked back at her and snapped. "I was driving just fine. You're the one who insisted on talking to me." He Qingwan's face darkened with a somber, menacing look. She looked like she was ready to turn that rage against me. She managed to force a few words out. She hissed through her teeth. "So you're saying this is my fault?" "It's my fault for being useless," I replied with fake justification. "Whenever I hear your voice, I just want to fall asleep." I got nervous and hit the brakes, but I couldn't slow down. I can't even tell the gas from the brake anymore, so I guess it's my FU. But I didn't actually feel that way at all. My face didn't show a single ounce of remorse. After saying my piece, I didn't bother looking at her and stepped out of the car. He Qingwan let out a cold, sharp laugh behind me. With a frozen expression, she called her assistant to come handle the wreck. She finished the call and saw me leaning over toward the other driver. I was saying something to the owner of the car we hit, the man whose night we had just completely ruined. I watched He Qingwan's reaction. Her posture was stiff and fascinating. I was clearly apologizing to the people who had almost lost their lives. I was apologizing for doing something wrong. This version of me, it was completely different from the man people used to know. In He Qingwan's memory, the old me never apologized to anyone except her. I used to be arrogant and impulsive. Even when I did something terrible, I always kept that same haughty attitude. I used to think everyone else deserved whatever happened to them. In a crash like this, I wouldn't have even stepped out of the car. I wouldn't have cared if they lived or died, but now I asked, "Are you okay?" The woman stepped out of her car, rubbing her skin. She was clutching her neck in pain. A dark bruise was already forming on her pale forehead. Her face was delicate and perfect, which only made my guilt feel heavier. I felt a genuine surge of regret. Then I realized she was the lead actress from that new movie, the one about the youth of the city. It was called Divine. and it had just been released in theaters. She was a popular actress, and I was actually a big fan of that movie. But then I remembered something from the original story. The book mentioned she was one of the most important people to be killed off. She had been collaborating with the protagonist, Shinza. In the original plot, at least, the description of her was legendary. A former child star, polished and perfect like a wax figure. A top-tier celebrity in every sense of the word. And when she signed on for her first major film, specifically Shinza's breakout movie, the fact that he managed to work with her had fans celebrating for days on end. Her career was reaching new heights every single day. Their chemistry on screen was supposed to be incredible, but her time on screen with Shinza ended up being tragically short. She was the talk of the entire internet, but it didn't last. It was also this year, right before everything changed, that the investigation began. Following the death of Wanzu, she died as well, leaving a long suicide note behind. It was a shocking end for someone so bright. She was always there, shining in front of the camera, until she wasn't. Behind that sunny exterior and that radiant smile lurked a pair of vampire parents. They were the ones who clipped her wings. They crushed her dreams. They stripped away her very identity. They treated her like a cash cow, ignoring her feelings while she spiraled into depression. Then, her parents forced her to entertain a powerful industry big shot, a man no one dared to offend. It turned her world into a living hell. That was the final straw. When I read that part of the book, I felt a heavy sadness. I felt like she was my own shadow, and I actually shed tears for her. Luru. She looked at her car, then glanced over and caught my eye with a smile. I had to remind myself, man, I'm a guy, why am I getting so emotional? Was I really seeing this legendary woman sitting in her car at the intersection? She had been rear-ended while waiting, right there at the red light. I quickly snapped back to reality and looked into her eyes. Her lingering anguish was still there, hidden deep. I'm truly sorry. I'll take full responsibility for the car repairs and all your expenses. I'll cover your medical checkup and compensation for the mental stress as well. Most people's first impression of her is usually nothing but awe and admiration. They see a goddess. They greet her with screams and gasps of amazement. But this was the first time Lu Ruyan had someone look at her with those eyes. It was as if I were looking right through her. Seeing the misery hidden beneath her elegant coat left her stunned. She pulled out her phone. Give me your mobile number. I need your contact information. That way, if any issues come up later regarding the follow-up compensation, it'll be easier for us to get in touch. Lu Ruyan didn't care about the car at all, and she certainly didn't want the money. But that look I just gave her made it impossible for her to look away. I took her phone and added my contact info. After dialing the number, she handed it back, and a smirk played on my lips. The great star, Lu Ruyan. Ruyan, how could I not know you? I'm your most loyal fan. Could you give me another autograph? Lu Ruyan stared at me, her eyes filled with disbelief. I clearly wasn't showing the typical excitement of a fan meeting their idol. When I saw she wasn't moving, I stepped closer. I pulled her into an embrace and whispered, if you don't want to go through the trouble, don't worry. Forget the autograph. Just give me a hug instead. Lu Ruyan stood there, completely frozen in place. This wasn't like the frantic, desperate hugs she was used to from her fans on Earth. There was no trembling excitement or grabby hands. I just held her in silence, as if I were confessing a secret to her heart. I was holding her, but more than that, I was comforting her. You're truly excellent, you know? Your presence, your light. It has given so many people the courage to face their own failures. You've given them the drive to keep moving forward, and I hope one day you see it. I hope that we can give you that same courage back. Let us be the strength that pushes you, the force that keeps you moving forward. She was watching everything from the car. Resolving a traffic accident had somehow turned into flirting with other women. Chen Qingan stepped out of the vehicle with a dead serious expression and pulled me out of the woman's arms. Just then, her assistant Jean Yao also rushed over to the scene. Qingan grabbed her house keys and headed straight for her car. She dragged me along with her, leaving Lu Ruyan standing there, just watching us go. In her mind, the words I had just spoken were still echoing. I looked back and smiled at her one last time. I gave her a small wave, my expression bright and clear. It was a smile as soft as spring blossoms in March, gentle and fleeting, like a warm breeze slowing down to a halt, or a perfect June afternoon, standing out from all the rest. It held all the beauty in the world. Under the warm light, the moment felt frozen against the sky, just like a masterpiece painting. Qingan shoved me back against the car frame. Her face was cold as ice, and the look she gave me made me feel like I was nothing. She leaned into my face and hissed, "Your audacity is growing by the day." She was clearly more affected by this than she wanted to admit. I did it all voluntarily. My fingers traced slow lines across her body. I could feel her waist through the thin fabric of her clothes. I whispered, "My life is in your hands now. Since you won't let me touch anyone else, I guess I'll just have to touch you." I definitely had the nerve to do it. "I'll warm your bed," I thought, as I leaned in even closer. Chen Qingan looked disgusted as she yanked the car door open with a stony face. She grabbed me and shoved me inside the vehicle. With one hard push, she treated me like someone who didn't belong there. She thinks she can threaten me just because I'm not allowed to touch her. But suddenly, I felt a strange sense of relief. On the way back, I got a phone call from Wenyu. It was getting so late. She asked, "Are you still not home yet?" I didn't want them to worry, but things were complicated. I can't get a divorce yet, and now my life is literally being threatened. With Chen Qingan involved, this surely won't be the last time. I'll have to deal with this every single day at home. I had no choice but to tell her there had been a car accident. I told her I wouldn't see her tonight. Chen Qingan actually asked me for forgiveness. I decided to give her a chance. Chen Qingan looked at me through the rearview mirror with a very different expression. She gave me a withering glare and smiled with pure irony. When you always knew this would be the result. It didn't surprise her much. She just sounded a bit disappointed as she hung up the phone. She told me to come over for lunch tomorrow. I glanced at Chen Qingan, who walked into the house looking a bit shaken. I was the one driving now, and I accepted the situation for the moment. That's what Mrs. Winterton said. If anything happens, remember to tell Mom. Get some rest early, she added, and I just nodded. I told her, you and Dad should get to bed soon too. Don't stay up late, and stop worrying about the future. For me, I ended the call right there. As soon as I hung up, that hateful voice of Chen Qingan echoed out, I'm sorry. Forgive what? I asked casually, just making up an excuse to mess with her. I was doing this for my parents. How could you ever be wrong? You're never wrong. Everything is my fault. I clearly wasn't happy, but I had to keep pushing forward. I had to please her, letting her enjoy the pleasure of tormenting me. If she's satisfied, my days will be better. Chen Qingan is acting like a big player. She's crossing the line. I remember you used to love doing this. Writing those little essays on your social feed. Since you know you're wrong, write one tonight. No less than 300 words. The original owner wrote them every day, but she just blocked him. Now that you haven't seen them for a while, I recommend you try it. She's forcing me to write them again. I'll have to do it. Honestly, if the lead isn't a total pervert, he can't be the protagonist of a CEO novel. I smiled and agreed to write it as soon as I got home. I went back to my room. I sent out a message. I contacted the brothers, Bain and Bean. What is the probability of the virus resurfacing? The probability that we can sink Gius and Odile. Tell me, how much money do you need? Chen Qingan, in just 2 years, you made the GU Group leap forward. To become the leading local company, there must be plenty of dirty secrets hidden away. But she's the female lead, protected by that thick layer of plot armor. The book doesn't show her flaws, but if I don't want to be her puppet, I need to find one. I have to become stronger than her. I refuse to believe that a transmigrator like me can't handle her. Sinking Gius? No, I'm going to dismantle Gius myself. I'll make sure Gius seizes every single opportunity to make money until they're on top. Thank you, I muttered to myself. You really hate her, don't you? A second later, I realized I wasn't the only one who had made a mistake. She was in my house, fast asleep. Jealous again? My sister is always so jealous. I didn't hide it. I told Bain and Bean about the video Chen Qingan was using to blackmail me. The look on their faces shifted instantly. Bain's expression darkened into something cold. What video? Send it to me right now, so I can see it. I sent him a quick greeting and the file. I watched the video, unfazed, thinking, you guys shouldn't even know about this, right? Bain and Bean stayed silent for a long time, looking like their world had been turned upside down. They really have no idea what's coming. It was Gio. Qingan was the one who settled it all in secret, all for the sake of the company's growth. And now, it's become the ultimate bargaining chip to control me. She wants to own me, so I have to ruin her and take my life back. I need that leverage. To threaten her, I stared intently at the woman on the screen. I stared at her face on the display. Then, I remembered something. The Mu family subsidiary company has its own industrial chain. They own a massive film and production network. I told them, have someone send me a copy immediately. I need the full database of all our signed artists. Bain asked me, sounding completely confused. What do you want that for? He muttered. So I gave him a serious explanation. I just thought of a project to make us a fortune, but I can't explain it over the phone. I felt like an office worker taking on a new script, treating this like a side hustle, just like I did back in college. I started making contacts and studying the short-form drama industry. I began looking into several short film projects. I looked at dramatic projects with multi-million-dollar budgets. Some of these had daily revenues topping 100 million. They rivaled major productions that cost hundreds of millions to film. Short-form dramas are fast, the acting is mediocre, and the plots are often trashy. They aren't exactly high art. They lack that refined, sophisticated touch. But despite that, everyone absolutely loves watching them. The comment sections are filled with people mocking the quality on one side, while the other side is desperately begging for a sequel. In this era of explosive video growth, I saw my opening. Short-form videos were the key. In this novel's world, these dramas are a gold mine waiting to be tapped. Short videos are just getting popular, but the drama craze hasn't hit yet. The entertainment industry is still stuck in its traditional, boring ways. I'll take every viral hit I remember from my past life and film them now. By the time others try to follow the trend, I'll already own the market. I took a quick shower and saw a notification pop up. The email with the data had finally arrived. I fired up my computer and started scanning the files one by one. The company had recently signed a new batch of talent. I decided to take some time to visit the company and check out the new rookies. But first, I needed to turn those viral drama ideas into scripts as soon as possible. I stopped as soon as I felt I had enough for now. While I was getting ready to leave the house, I was still writing with pure adrenaline. Then, Hyunchi herself sent me a message. She was asking why it was so difficult for me. Did I want to write 300 words? Or did I want to do it in 3D? She even suggested I extend it to 500. 500 words? I looked at the clock and realized the time. It was already incredibly late. This crazy woman doesn't sleep, and she's still obsessed with my little essay. She's seriously sick in the head. Determined to disgust her to death, I quickly posted an explosive public update to my feed. I think I crave your body more every day. Without you, I wouldn't even be here. In the quiet of the night, I can only think of the image in your photos. I even left a link to my YouTube channel right there. Let me crush you. Those lips of yours are going to be the end of me. Cold and pale, I wonder if they're as soft as I've spent 2 days imagining. That body of yours that dances all day long. So seductive. So precious. Is it as smooth as it looks in the video? I can only imagine. Yunchi definitely didn't expect me to be this bold. I was being completely shameless, writing to her so openly like this. I could picture her face right now, turning black with rage, then flushing bright red. Red, then back to black again. But unfortunately, I soon realized something was off. Something was very wrong. Normally, whenever I post something online, all those sycophants who usually flatter me would be spamming the like button and leaving comments. This is the exact time of night when everyone is scrolling through their phones. But a significant amount of time had already passed, and my notifications were dead silent. Not a single comment, not even a single like. Obviously, I was being ignored. But then Yunchi replied, "You write quite well. From now on, I want you to write one of these every single day." After seeing that message, I decided to stay up all night and get to work. I forced myself to start drafting a script. I mapped out 2 different openings, each with its own unique style. By the time I finished 300 episodes, it was past 5 in the morning. I was so exhausted I couldn't move, so I encrypted the file and collapsed into bed. When Yunchi woke up, she saw there was no breakfast on the table. There wasn't a single sound coming from downstairs. She walked over and turned the knob to my bedroom door. Finding it locked from the inside, she began to pound on the wood. I was so sleep-deprived that I barely registered the noise. I pulled the blanket over my head to drown her out. It didn't help. The banging only got louder and more aggressive. The rhythmic thudding against the door was relentless. It echoed through the room, second after second. It felt like she was never going to stop. She wasn't going to quit until I opened that door. I snapped awake, stood up, and yanked it open to face her. I was in my loose pajamas, hair a mess, yawning uncontrollably. I asked her, what could possibly be so important at this hour? Despite her morning mood, she had a certain sharp beauty to her. Yunchi stood there, fully dressed and ready for the day. She brushed a stray hair from her face and stared me down. She looked me right in the eye and demanded, "Where is breakfast?" I thought, "You're banging on my door just for a meal? I'm not a chef." To get my revenge, I stepped forward and pulled her into a tight hug. I whispered, "There's no breakfast. Why don't you just eat me instead?" The scent of my shampoo and soap hit her, momentarily catching her off guard. But that brief distraction didn't last long. Her muscle memory kicked in, and she shoved me away with pure disgust. With a cold expression, she asked, "Are you sure there isn't any?" I gritted my teeth and sighed. "Fine, I'll go make it right now." I hadn't stepped foot in the kitchen since I arrived in this world. The fridge was nearly empty, but I managed to find some eggs and noodles. By the time I finished cooking, that crazy woman had already left the house. I figured she wasn't coming back, so I ate it myself and headed back to bed. Then, a message from her popped up on my phone. "Stop what you're doing and bring it to the company office." Of course, typical. This woman truly has a God-given talent. A talent for torturing people until they break. I gritted my teeth, changed my clothes, and grabbed my notebook. Before leaving, I spotted the card I had placed on the divorce agreement. It was still sitting on the coffee table, so I snatched it up and tucked it into my pocket. I stopped to buy some breakfast and headed straight to the GU Group building. I arrived just as Yunchi was heading into a meeting. I didn't want to wait, so I just sent her a quick message. I left the food on her desk and walked out as fast as I could. Later, I met with the producer and showed her the prologue of my new script. She looked at the pages with a face full of pure disbelief. I smiled and nodded, saying, "Fresh concept, right? I think so too." I pulled up a chair and sat down once she finished reading. I told her, "I'm planning to turn these into a series of short-form dramas." I explained the market potential of short videos and where the industry is heading. With hundreds of millions of users already on board, the future is massive. I could see she was starting to buy into my vision. Look at her, talking about her career nonstop, her face practically glowing with life. There was a spark in her eyes and a genuine smile on her lips. Thinking about the future, what would you want most? What's the dream? She looked back down at the script I had just handed her. She took a moment to keep reading. Since I'm occupying the body of the transmigrator Mukin, her knowledge of me is limited. She only knows the spoiled, stubborn version of this young man. The young master, spoiled, picky about food, and someone who would never touch street snacks. A mess, always out of sync. A man who only wore luxury brands and never bought anything cheap. Ever since I fell for Yunchi, my eyes have been fixed only on her. I didn't pay attention to anything else in the story. I would have stayed stuck in that house if the situation hadn't changed. A total shift of the soul. How could someone change so fast? How could it be so sudden? I saw her staring at me in a daze. I grabbed a pen from the holder and gave her a light tap on the forehead. I have to admit, even Yunchi would be tempted by this face. Ningbing crossed her hands over the table and looked at me. There was a strange warmth and affection in her eyes. "Do you think it will work? We can give it a try. Since it was your idea, after all, Why don't you take charge of this project? I accepted gladly, no problem at all. I'll give the director the script first, then head to the agency to cast the leads. Could you help me follow up on the next steps? Can you put in a good word with the agency for me? Bai Ningbing asked me with a curious tilt of her head. I waved my hand and told her to focus on her own work. If I ran into trouble, I'd find her, but for now, the short film was settled. I remembered something else and turned back around. I caught her off guard as I turned. Bai Ningbing had been staring at me the whole time. I pretended not to notice her gaze. There's one more thing I need to tell you. I mentioned dealing with Lu Ruian, and Bai Ningbing's brow furrowed. She leaned back in her chair and looked at me with doubt. Why do you suddenly want her gone? Do you want to sign her? I asked, analyzing the situation seriously. I felt she was a rare talent in the entertainment industry. She'll definitely be famous one day, but her path in music has been rough. The one holding her back has always been her father. He refuses to let her sign with any agency. Draft the contract, I told her, and I'll handle the negotiations with him. I'd make sure her father agreed to the deal. I left the office, feeling like I had a solid plan. I moved forward with total confidence. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more. But then, something caught me off guard. I had just stepped out of the company building. I was about to head over to the Quadro agency. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I thought it might be the police, but it was a message from my wife. It was a text from Bai Ningbing. If you try to serve me takeout for lunch again today, get ready to be the front page headline. I grit my teeth in rage. This crazy woman was actually going to ruin me. I checked the time and rushed to a high-end mall to find something better. I knew exactly what kind of luxury items someone like her would want. It was all about appearances. I bought expensive gifts for the parents first. Then I headed back to the Mu family estate for lunch. When Yutong saw me arrive with gifts and looked surprisingly pleased, she probably thought I was finally coming to my senses. She glanced toward the entrance, looking for someone else. So, you came back alone? She asked coldly. I made up a quick excuse about her being too busy with work to join us. She looked at the bags in my hands and scoffed. You bought things. We don't need anything from you, she added, trying to act indifferent. She claimed her life was already perfect as it was. But then, her eyes locked onto the designer bag I had picked out. She grabbed it and started inspecting every single inch of the leather. I could tell she loved it. She probably wanted to throw out her entire closet right then. The maid nearby started showering her with compliments about the gift. She kept going on and on about how famous and exclusive this specific brand was. She told her it was the perfect accessory for a woman of her status. When Yutong actually stood up and held the bag against her outfit, she lifted it up to the light, admiring it with a genuine spark in her eyes. Right, Mukin? Isn't this gift you bought me beautiful? The young master really does have excellent taste. Next time I go out to the estate, I'll bring this along for afternoon tea. I didn't expect her to be this happy over a simple bag. Usually, parents in these families only know how to criticize their children's choices. They always compare what they received to what other people's children bought for their parents. I had never been praised like this before. I'd only heard my colleagues brag about the gifts their kids bought them. I assumed mothers in wealthy families already had everything. I thought they didn't care about these material things. After dinner was over, I went to find Mother Lu. The meal had finished, and it was time to move. I asked Mother Lu to pack up the leftovers for me. She looked at me like she had misheard my request. When she realized I wanted to pack them for Guinan, her eyes nearly popped out. Young master, it's not right to pack scraps for the young mistress. Let me cook 2 fresh dishes. I simply waved my hand to dismiss her concerns. It's fine. Mother Lu watched me as I packed the food. In the past, I would always prepare everything for Guinan in advance. I used to pick the very best portions and worry myself sick over her. But now, I was just packing up the scraps. The young master has truly changed. Mother Lu quickly changed the subject. Young master, just look at your mother. It's the first time I've seen her this happy. She's so eager to show that gift off to the whole world at afternoon tea. I was genuinely surprised and asked, really? Mother Lu sighed and told me I didn't understand how it worked. When those wealthy ladies gather for tea, they compete over who has the best husband or children. She wasn't happy about the bag itself, but because I was the one who bought it. I looked over at Wen Yutong, who was busy fixing her appearance. She wasn't just thrilled about a designer accessory. She was glowing because her son finally showed her some affection. In the original story, the protagonist never bothered with his parents. Instead, he humiliated himself just to propose and rush into marriage with Guinan. He only had eyes for her, like a mindless dog. He never once stopped to ask how his own parents were doing. When those ladies chat together, Wen Yutong usually has to stay silent. She'd listen with envy while the others bragged about their lives. But now that her son bought her this bag, she finally has something to show off. I remember that after the Wincy Group went bankrupt in the original plot, the things I'm doing now are what I've wanted to do most. Those socialites who used to visit her constantly, they all jumped at the first chance they got. They mocked her for raising a useless son who lost everything. The entire family legacy was ruined because of him. I couldn't help myself, so I walked over to her. Mom, let me help you pick out an outfit to match the bag. I wanted to give her my best advice. When Yutong looked radiant, she was no longer in a bad mood. She was genuinely happy. She put on an exquisite outfit. She looked more beautiful than anyone else in this novel world. By the time I arrived at the Hue Group headquarters, it was already almost 1 o'clock, and I ran into a man I'd seen on the street. I walked up to Jean Yao and shoved the thermos directly into her hands. Inside was the meal I had prepared for He Qin Yan. Back in the office, the door swung open and she instinctively looked up. It was her assistant, Su Yao. "The young master has started bringing you food again," she noted. He Qin Yan's expression turned a degree colder as she looked at her assistant. "Did he leave?" she asked, her voice flat and honest. Su Yao had been eating takeout for days and clearly missed my cooking. She looked at the container, realizing it was the same blue one I always used. Seeing that her boss had no more questions, Su Yao turned to go. She moved to take the food for herself, just like she usually did. She hugged the thermos tight and prepared to walk out of the office. "I'll be going then," she said, looking genuinely happy. But before she could take another step, He Qin Yan stopped her coldly. "Where do you think you're taking that?" Su Yao froze, not understanding why her boss suddenly cared about my food. He Qin Yan radiated a dangerous, freezing aura that demanded obedience. Su Yao immediately shut up and placed the thermos on the desk. She scurried away, leaving the meal sitting there on the table. He Qin Yan stared at the thermos, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the wood. I leaned against the armrest and picked up my phone as I got into the car. I was talking to the agency director when He Qin Yan called me. "Buy me a coffee from Banua Street and deliver it to me," she commanded. I grit my teeth and thought, "Is your assistant dead?" She took it for granted that I should handle these trivial errands for her. "You're just perfect, aren't you?" I said sarcastically. "I appreciate you letting me know I'm still useful for something." I hung up and headed toward the agency anyway while the rain started to fall. The staff there had no idea what the young master of the Mu family was up to. They wondered if I only had eyes for He Qin Yan since I never touched family business. Why would I suddenly show up at the company to handpick lead actors? Maybe he's been neglected too long and wants to find a young girl to keep, they whispered. They assumed I was looking for someone to satisfy my needs outside of my marriage. Usually, scripts are distributed and directors hold auditions, but I was bypassing everything. I had come straight to the office and named a few specific new hires. Sanjin Wan refuted the gossip, telling them their imaginations were running too wild. "If he were looking for women, why would he call us into the room?" she asked. She basically called them idiots for thinking I was that shallow. But the rumors continued to fly as I approached the building. I could hear the girls arguing amongst themselves as I walked through the door. I reached the office door. The door swung open and the director stepped out. He gestured for me to come inside. The room went dead silent the moment I entered. The director cleared his throat and said, "Everyone is here." I scanned the room from front to back, and honestly, it looked like a total disaster. I walked straight toward the group of girls. I reached out and gripped the arm of the girl on the far left. She has no collarbone definition. She needs to train harder if she wants a leading face. Xinyue's face turned bright red instantly. I moved to the next girl and pinched her waist, telling her she was too soft and needed to lose weight. Xanin couldn't help but pipe up, asking if physique really mattered that much for acting. I looked her in the eye and said, "That depends on what kind of role you want. If you want to be a lead, your face and your figure are your only currency." I kept looking them over, disappointed that the gap between their photos and reality was so wide. Either their looks were lacking or their bodies weren't toned enough. None of them were meeting the standard I needed. These low-budget short series pay absolute peanuts. Established stars won't touch them with a 10-foot pole. That leaves me with nothing but these raw, unpolished rookies. They have to rely entirely on their visual appeal. If the lead isn't attractive, the audience won't watch, and as a visual-obsessed person myself, if I'm not satisfied, they won't be either. I finally started explaining my purpose. I have a plan to film a series. It's a short series, not some multi-million-dollar TV drama. Each episode is only a few minutes long, basically short-form videos. I hadn't even finished my introduction yet when Hyukingen sent me a message. "Buy a coffee and get yourself to the airport," she ordered. "She's heading abroad," I realized as I typed back. I told her, "Traffic is a nightmare. I don't feel like it. Give me another half hour." I put my phone away and turned back to the group. I continued, "The filming cycle for a project like this is incredibly fast. We're looking at approximately 7 to 12 days total. The pay depends on the role, starting from €600 for the project, up to $10,000 a day for top talent. If you want to sharpen your acting skills, you can sign up with the director today." But my mind was elsewhere. Hyukingen was still threatening me. I waited for her next set of instructions to flash on my screen. I wrapped things up and left in a total rush. "Are you guys actually going to do it?" one of them asked. "Do you really believe what he's saying? It's nonsense. Filming a whole series in just over a week. 1-minute episodes with a rookie lead? I've never heard of such a thing." Chumyakin started analyzing the situation. He had noticed the way I was scanning everyone in the room. From the moment I arrived, it was clear I was hunting for talent. "It's a real shame," he added, "because he doesn't look satisfied with any of you." He kept his tone light and joking. "Actually, it seems like he was pretty impressed, specifically with your face. I saw the way he looked at you a moment ago. Better lose some weight fast. Don't let this opportunity pass you by." I made it back to the company. The delivery driver was already there. He was waiting right at the main entrance. I handed him a tip, grabbed the coffee, and rushed off. I grabbed the coffee and sprinted up the stairs. I burst through the office door in a total rush. Hyukingen's cold gaze locked onto me, but I didn't care. I handed her the coffee and forced a smile onto my face. "I'm sorry for making the president wait," I said. Beads of sweat were still clinging to my forehead. My breathing was heavy and ragged. I acted like my very life depended on her satisfaction. Hyukingin stared down at the coffee sitting on the table. She was clearly checking to see if I'd poisoned it. A second later, I picked it up and took a sip myself. I kept smiling at her, but the warmth didn't reach my eyes. Are you relieved now, President? I asked as her expression darkened. She glanced at the coffee I had just tasted. I rounded the desk and leaned in close, acting like I wanted to throw myself into her arms. Do you need anything else? Kisses? Hugs? I teased as she slid her chair back. She looked at me like I was some kind of monster, but I didn't have time to enjoy it. I've invited some friends over for dinner tonight, she said coldly. Go home and prepare it. She told me she'd order takeout in the morning, but tonight was different. She expected a home-cooked meal, and she'd be paying my mother's expenses for the month. It was already noon, and I really didn't want to cook for her. But she insisted I do it, so I bit my lip and held back. I swallowed my anger and kept that fake smile plastered on my face. Yes, my dear CEO. How many friends? Chinese or Western food? Hyukingin answered me with a casual, indifferent tone. 5 or 6, you decide, she said, and I turned to leave. Understood, my dear CEO. I'll head out first to get everything ready, I said, dropping the smile the moment I turned my back. That crazy woman, I can't let her keep me under her thumb like this. I can't let her torture me all day. I have to find her something else to focus on. I needed her to pay more attention to the actual business process. She needed to focus on the male lead instead of me. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hyukingin watched me as I walked out of the office. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. She loosened her tie the second I was gone. She picked up the coffee from the table and took a slow sip. Only then did she realize that I had already drank from that same spot, just moments before. Her face darkened instantly, looking like a total disaster. It was as if a violent storm had just swept through her mind. She slammed the coffee cup back down on the table immediately. She didn't want to think about her father right now. She couldn't take another sip, picturing me being intimate with someone else. To her, that was the ultimate test of a man's patience. Feeling inexplicably irritable, she finally tossed the cup into the trash. Out of sight, out of mind, or so she hoped. She just wanted to forget everything and lose herself in the music. Later that evening, Hyukingin arrived back at the villa. She was still standing in the courtyard when she heard it. Lively, upbeat music was blasting from inside the living room. When she stepped inside, I was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the rich aroma of food wafted through the air. The scent was coming from the kitchen as she took off her coat. She walked to the kitchen door and saw 3 people inside. It was me, busy cooking with 2 other women. One of them was holding out a spoonful of food for me to taste. This is delicious, I said, offering her a compliment. With a figure as good as yours, I didn't think you did heavy kitchen work, but it turns out you have some real skills. So what do you think? What do you think I'm trying to do? I leaned in closer to her. With your looks and your figure, it's a real shame you aren't a professional model. As I spoke, I could feel the tension in the room spike. It felt like I was sitting on a floor made of needles. One wrong move, and the whole charade would shift out of place. A second later, I turned around and saw Hyukingin standing there. Her face was dark and gloomy, as if I owed her millions and hadn't paid back a cent. I barely had time to step toward her. She curled her lips in a cold sneer and looked dead inside. She mocked me with a sharp, biting tone. I asked you to cook, and you brought 2 women into my house. You certainly know how to enjoy yourself, don't you? Do you really want me to explain? I asked. You're already in love with me, aren't you? Hyukingin's eyes flashed as she reached for her phone. I immediately reached out and grabbed her hand to stop her. I wasn't about to let her ruin the fun. The truth is, my cooking skills are actually pretty terrible. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to present anything decent, or that I wouldn't do the job right. I was honestly worried. I didn't want you to lose face in front of your friends. So, I went ahead and hired 2 professional chefs. I'm not an idiot. If I were looking for women, I wouldn't bring them here. Just then, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Hyukingin shot me a sharp, warning glare. She pulled her hand back, and I immediately headed for the door. When I got back, Hyukingin's phone started ringing. I caught a glimpse of the screen. It was Chunja calling. I couldn't help but sharpen my ears to listen in. Chunja had sent an urgent message of thanks from across the city. Along with it came a bouquet of flowers and a package. She reached out and opened the express delivery. Inside the box sat a brand new suit. It looked expensive and perfectly tailored. Tucked into the fabric was a small information card. The card simply read, I like you. I dream about you. Every single day. I have such a strong desire to see you. I think you'll look absolutely charming wearing this. Hyukingin immediately felt that the man was a total pervert. She realized this place was being watched by him, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. When she called Chunja back, his voice was trembling as he spoke. Sister Kingin, can you come over to my house? What's wrong? I think I've encountered a man. I think I've run into a pervert. Hearing those 2 words, I could barely stop myself from laughing. I bit my lip hard. I forced the urge down with everything I had. I watched as Hyukingin finished her frantic explanation and hung up the phone. I rushed over to help carry the dishes to the table. In 2 years of marriage, this was the first time Hyukingin had invited everyone over. They all acted like natural-born sisters after that public display of affection. They thought they had finally secured their happiness the moment they stepped through the door. They showered her with gifts, and Su Jinyao handed her a 5,888 yuan voucher for a theme hotel. Su Jinyao was also carrying a mysterious-looking gift bag. These are things that my friends and I have used, she whispered. We found them very effective, so I wanted to share them with you. Hyukingen looked at the items, each one more scandalous than the last, and blurted out, I have to go. I set the plates down and looked up when I heard she was leaving. I immediately gave her a look of deep concern and understanding. If you have business to attend to, go ahead and take care of it. I told her I'd entertain the guests and shoved the plates into Su Jingyao's empty hands. I acted with the utmost attentiveness and care. I glanced at the gift in her hand and said, hurry now. Don't let us delay your important matters. Hyukingen stood there, frozen in her memories for a second. She looked at me with impatience, as if she hadn't realized my true intentions. She clearly just wanted me to get lost. She scanned the room full of people, reached out, and signaled to the woman who hadn't noticed her yet. She reached out and grabbed me firmly by the wrist. You're coming with me, she commanded. I need to take you along whenever I go out to handle business. Our relationship had reached a point where things were shifting fast. Her group of best friends looked on, completely stunned by her behavior. I protested. It wouldn't be right for me to just leave like this. You have things to do, but we have guests in our home. There was no logical reason for us to both vanish. It's bad form for the host to abandon the party entirely. Someone had to stay behind to entertain them. I desperately wanted to refuse her. This was my perfect chance to manipulate her feelings further. I needed to distract her so she'd worry about the male lead, that perverted fan I'd spent so much time and money inventing. If I tagged along now, how was their relationship supposed to progress? My presence would only ruin the friction I'd created. Do whatever you want, Hyukingen told the group coldly. She gave them the green light to watch the video without us. She tossed those words to her friends over her shoulder. Then, she tightened her grip on my arm and dragged me right out the door. She moved so fast I couldn't even shake her off. The next thing I knew, she was shoving me into the car. That's when I noticed it. The car was filled with adult toys, the kind you'd only find in a themed hotel. And there was a note from my dear friends. My face turned bright red as I immediately dumped them all on Hyukingen. I thought, she'll definitely need these tonight. My friends sure know how to give gifts. But no, this made it even harder for me to go with her. If we both left, what would happen to the chaos I'd set in motion? I told her I'd wait at home for the guests, but she saw right through me. I threw the items aside. They landed in the back seat. Then she started the engine and took off. I didn't even have time to grab my phone. When we arrived at Chinja's house, I tried one last time to escape. I told her to handle it while I waited in the car, but she just took the keys with her. I sat there in the passenger seat, trapped. I watched her walk toward the entrance without a second thought. She didn't even look back as she went inside. She was clearly worried sick about Chinja. I couldn't help myself, so I followed her with a sense of pure curiosity. I crept along the hidden walkways. Just outside the door, I saw Chinja. He had been pacing restlessly at home, waiting for Hyukingen to arrive. He looked at her, as if he were seeing an old flame. He rushed out to meet her immediately. When she turned to greet him, she showed him her face. And then the card. She started explaining everything that had happened. It was obvious that whenever something goes wrong, he's the first person she thinks of. With her by his side, he won't be afraid anymore. He'll finally feel at peace. But she's married, so he has to suppress his feelings for her. He keeps a friendly distance, knowing she doesn't love me, yet she still fulfills her duties as a wife. He always maintains that boundary. He keeps a careful distance from her, but deep down, he's just waiting for her to get a divorce. The moment I mentioned we were splitting up, all that love he had suppressed inside his house exploded. It was as if his heart had been straining under a massive weight. Now, those feelings have taken root and sprouted. They're growing wild, and he can't contain them anymore. Hyukingen started checking the security cameras. She went through every second of the surveillance footage. Then she made a call to have the package tracked down. After that, I watched as she put away her phone and looked straight at him. Don't stay here until this is resolved, she told him. I watched them chatting so dryly, so professionally. There wasn't even any real eye contact or physical touch between them. Nothing worth noting at all. Honestly, I feel cheated. Where's the scared girl throwing herself into his arms? The CEO's intimate comfort? The kisses? The R-rated drama? They really need to stop this torture. Even a turtle would move faster than these two. The Ninja Turtles themselves would be put to shame by this pace. They'd look completely eclipsed by how slow this is. I've just been sitting here, fidgeting like I'm playing a game, messing with a green potted plant I have within reach. I was supposed to be focused on the camera control system, but instead, I was just absent-mindedly plucking at the leaves. I was so frustrated by their lack of progress that when I finally snapped out of it, the green plant in my hand had been completely uprooted. To Chinja, who had just walked out and saw me, it looked like I had misunderstood the situation and flown into a jealous rage. She started to leave. She flinched, about to explain herself, so I immediately dropped the plant and forced an embarrassed smile. I started talking even faster than she could, trying to get ahead of the misunderstanding. I'm sorry, I was just bored, I said quickly. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. I used too much force, so I'll buy you a new pot tomorrow, I added as Hyukingen gave me a strange look. I don't want to ruin their bonding time, so I pick up the pace and get out of there. Chinja is still she's still Sister Kingen. Is Myukin misunderstanding this and getting angry? Hyukingen hides her face, leaning against that figure. I told myself not to worry about her anymore. I hurried back to the car and sat in the back, leaving the passenger seat for Chinja. When I saw her, I closed my eyes, making it clear I didn't want to be disturbed. She had no choice but to give up on talking. A moment later, she stared intently at Hyukingen. I saw her looking at me through the back of the seat, watching me in the rearview mirror. She had asked about the divorce earlier, and I had refused to answer. Now, she probably thinks I followed her here in secret. It turns out my focus on the camera system didn't look like work at all. It looked like I was stalking her in her own car. She started to look physically uneasy, like her health was wavering. She was terrified that I would misunderstand everything. Her heart was racing, pounding against her chest in the silence. In an instant, she was filled with panic, and feeling helpless, she headed straight to her father's house. It felt like something was slipping through her fingers. Trying to stay calm, Hyukingen started the engine. She glanced over at me through the mirror. "Have you eaten yet?" she asked softly. "Not yet," I replied coldly. After those two brief sentences, the car fell into a ghostly silence. I stole a few glances toward the front, but I didn't see any other interaction between the two of them. I honestly wished I could just turn invisible right there, just to let them have their moment without me watching. But Su Jinyao is watching us, and Kingen, this isn't about being heartless.